and welcome to today's event. My name is Jamie Lee and I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager here at Accoras. On behalf of my team at Accoras and the Australian and New Zealand Mental Health Association, welcome and thank you very much for joining us. Before we do start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to our elders past, present and emerging. May we continue to learn from them about our community, our culture, and of course our land. Now today's event, it's scheduled to run for approximately 30 minutes. We do have a lot to fit in, so there won't be a live Q&A at the end. Instead, what you can do, on the left of your screen right now, there should be a little chat box. So throughout James's presentation, if you have any questions, anything you would like more information on, put that into that chat box there, and as soon as today concludes, we'll go through that, review it, and get back to you directly via email. We're also going to send out a replay link as well, so if you need to jump off early or you know somebody who's missed out, that will be your opportunity to share it with them then. Now today's event, we've paired up with one of our good friends and partner organisations, the Australian and New Zealand Mental Health Association, because we are both very passionate not-for-profit organisations committed to educating our wider community on all things mental health, and we thought, being the end of Mental Health Month, it was the perfect time to do so. So we really hope that you leave today with some information that you can take back to your own workplace, your wider organisation, or perhaps share with your network to help promote and empower that positive mental health in a place that we spend a lot of our time, being the workplace. So what I'll do now is I'll hand over to the CEO of the Australian and New Zealand Mental Health Association, Sam Stewart.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And I'd just like to add that all of us here at the Australian New Zealand Mental Health Association are thrilled to be able to partner with Accoras. My name is Sam Stewart and I am the CEO of the Australian New Zealand Mental Health Association, and I'm proud to introduce one of our association ambassadors, James Hill. James pioneered a full-time position as mental health advocate for Energy Queensland and is also a mental health first aid instructor, speaker for Beyond Blue, contributes to several national mental health projects, and is in the final year of his Bachelor of Counselling. Now, James will give you insight into how to build a strong mental health culture within your workplace that really lasts. Take it away, James.
Hello, my name's James Hill. I'm here today to talk about creating a strong workplace mental health culture. Before I start, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which everybody tuned in is meeting on today, and also to pass on my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to take a second to acknowledge those of us here with a lived experience of mental ill health, or those who have supported somebody or are currently supporting somebody. So my role is a full-time mental health advocate at Energy Queensland. We're the electricity distributor for the entire state of Queensland, and this role was created by myself and a colleague 4 years ago when we felt there was a real need to look at mental health differently in the workplace and using a lived experience lens to actually create change. Part of my role has been responsible for developing and creating a mental health strategy and a plan for the organisation. We currently employ around 7,500 people across the state in various roles, from tradespeople to office-based people and several call centres. It makes this role very challenging, and it didn't come with an instruction manual. So what I'd like to share with you today is some of the lessons I've learned along the way, and hopefully you can take something from this to implement into your workplace to build a strong culture there. So when it comes to creating this structure within your business, and when it comes to actually looking at psychological risk management in the workplace, it can be very difficult often to know where to start. And sometimes, does it matter where we start? So when we're thinking about building these structures, it's often, I find, easier to simplify and think about as if you were building an actual building or a structure. It's not as simple as actually just going out and buying bricks and chucking them together, or just buying the flashiest furniture and hoping that it will fit. We actually need to have a plan and look where we start. And I think when we're looking at workplaces, likening it to building a building or a structure can really help us. When we look out there, looking at building this structure, there's fantastic products on offer, really, really good things that can help in workplaces, but are they right for you and your particular workplace? Because often going and buying the shiniest product on the shelf can do a lot more damage than it can do good. Just like when we're building that structure. If we go out and buy the materials that look really good on the showroom floor, they may not be necessarily the right products for what we're trying to achieve. So think about it like this. If you were going to build a house, let's say, and all you could afford was a 150 square meter block, but you saw a brochure in the shop for a big 6-bedroom house with a pool, and it looks good on paper, but when you actually come to put that on that block, it's not going to fit and it's not going to meet those requirements. Workplaces are the same. If we go and buy the products from the shelf because they look good, but they're not actually meeting our needs, we're not actually going to end up achieving what we wanted to achieve in the first place. There are risks attached with that, significant risks, by not addressing the right focus areas in our workplace. And what that can lead to is disengagement of workers and employees. We can have high staff turnover, higher rates of absenteeism, and even presenteeism, which can all impact our businesses negatively. And we don't really want to waste time and certainly money on things that are not going to actually achieve what we wanted to achieve. So when it comes to actually building this, it does matter when we start, where we start, and how we do it. So I would like to share some of the insights that I've learned over the last few years, and hopefully these are going to be the steps you can follow and implement within your workplace. So step one in our plan is planning. Planning and laying foundations. So if we think back to our physical structure, we need to plan what we want to build, and we need to understand what that looks like. So using several methods of research can help inform this decision. Yeah, we can use surveys and we can use questionnaires to understand those things, but those are only as good as the information that we get on that particular day and the mindset of the person who is filling it in on that day. Using more qualitative research by actually getting out on the ground, talking to people, understanding those challenges are going to help really form this plan. If we think about our physical structure we were looking to build, if somebody else was planning the house for you to live in, would you actually want to live there? Would it be to your specifications, or would it be to theirs, thinking they know what you actually want? And this is what we're really faced with when it comes to workplaces. We need to engage with the people who are impacted. We need to know what those challenges are for those people, because often that's where we're going to get the answers and the solutions from. Different areas of the business have different focus areas and at different points in time. So by engaging at that level, we can actually pull some of that information in and think about some of those challenges that are going to affect people. So let's look at us, for example. As I said, we've got several call centers across the state. That is a pretty unique challenge that we face. Call center environment's very different to just a generic office-based environment. So we need to sit down, spend time, spend weeks with those people, engaging with those employees, understanding the specific challenges, and asking them what solutions, what do they want? And that's going to help formulate our plan. Similarly with office or field-based people, people who work away from home, we have a look at male-dominated environments. How do we engage and start those conversations? Because often these conversations have never been had before. So how do we articulate what we want to get across with people who've probably never had these conversations before? So using that lived experience is really going to help us formulate that plan. And then we can come together with all our avenues of research that we've got Whether it be surveys or qualitative research that we've got these answers from, we can pull it all together and start designing our plan for the business. And continuing on with our first step is actually laying the foundations. So once we've got a bit of a plan and a vision of what we actually want to achieve and what some of those specific challenges are, we need to look about laying the foundations. Because think about our physical structure. If we just start laying bricks on the ground without any solid foundations, the longevity of that build is not going to be very long. So these foundations for our workplace need to be on creating that culture where we can have this conversation. Conversations is what forms those strong foundations. Without the ability to talk about mental health, mental ill health in the workplace, or anywhere for that example, we limit our ability to actually achieve anything. Anything we do beyond that is destined to fail. So an example of how to open up those conversations is using something as simple as a health continuum can help to introduce those conversations into the workplace. We can use a color system. So green is good functioning both physically and mentally, and we can slide down that scale into the yellow, orange, red. In the red is probably where we're not functioning very well, either physically or mentally. In the orange, we're just outside of those ranges. In the yellow, we're just starting to tip into that. So opening those conversations by just using colors, we can actually start destigmatizing things. So for somebody to come into work, maybe they've had a rough night's sleep, they're okay to be at work, but they don't want to tell everybody. Potentially they could say, hey, look, I'm just in the yellow today. I'm okay to be here, but I may need a bit of support or I may need a bit of assistance. They don't need to say why. Similarly with the physical injury, they could have had a bit of a sore shoulder today. They don't want to tell anybody exactly why, but they just say, look, I'm just in the yellow today. We're slowly, gradually starting to introduce these conversations without actually having to get down into the details, which can often hold people back from being totally honest. I find that drawing similarities between physical health and mental health are the easiest way to get people to understand, because we understand very easily how when we're physically unwell or we have a physical injury, how to deal with that, and we feel comfortable going and getting some support and getting some help. Often with mental ill health, mental challenges, we tend to wait till we get to a crisis point or things get really bad before we recognize and reach out for help. So this is a way of introducing that conversation to get that early intervention happening. So thinking of our foundations, we can think back to the old children's story, I suppose, about the three pigs and the big wolf. By simply grabbing the nearest things that we have to us, so the shiny things that we talked about on the shelf, and just throwing it together, yeah, we'll build a structure, we'll have something in place, but when something comes along to challenge that, like the wolf who's coming to blow it, they're the first things that fall over. So the house will build out of straw, will blow over. The house is built out of sticks, blows over. But the house that's built out of solid materials and has been thought through withstands those challenges. So we really need to make sure we base this on solid planning and solid foundations. Supporting the structure at all levels is essential. Otherwise, the risk of failure is greatly increased. So think of this as like the mortar between our bricks. If there's mortar between the bricks and it's the right consistency and it's at all levels, the structure is going to be strong. But if in some levels we don't have any mortar between the bricks, or the consistency isn't quite what it should be, as soon as any challenges come, that building's going to fall over. So it's really important to get buy-in and actual support from all levels of the business, right from the ground and right from the very top. Leadership is just like the mortar between these bricks. Whether that be formal leaders or informal leaders, they all play a key role in that consistency. So workplaces should invest time in that messaging coming from every level and that messaging to be consistent. So what does that mean? So genuine and clear communication with actions that also demonstrate what we are trying to achieve. That should be the greatest priority, and that's what builds the strength within the business and within the structure. So actions are what really demonstrate this. And when I say actions, I mean genuine actions. So we need leaders to be not just talking the talk, but walking the talk. Employees can see through things when they're not genuine or not consistent. It may look good by saying the right things, but scratch a little bit deeper, and we find the weaknesses within those messages. How do we achieve this? As a leader, it can be really, really hard and challenging sometimes, because generally people will come to you with business problems that need solutions or assistance with. And leaders, we tend to think that we need to find the answers. When it's looking at people, it's different. We don't need to fix people. People are generally not broken, but they may need support. And that's what we can do as a leader. We can provide support. Investing time in supporting leaders is also essential, because if we don't support the leaders who we expect to support our employees, we're destined for failure again. So engaging with leaders and understanding what some of those barriers are for them, for understanding what some of those challenges are, understanding do they know what support's available for them, particular, and their cohort, is vitally important, because that's where we need to start, by supporting the structure that's going to support the employees. A house survey was conducted in 2018 by Bupa, and what it found was 64% of senior leaders reported mental health conditions such as stress, anxiety, depression, and citing work as a major contributor. 58% said that as a leader, they find it really hard to talk about it. And 1 in 4 have felt less supported since they've become a leader. Sufferers felt that talking about it may impact their career, which is potentially a barrier for them reaching out for help. So investing time in our leaders first and foremost is essential. When we actually look now at our structure that we're trying to build, it isn't as simple as simply just stacking the bricks on top of each other in a straight line. Even if we've got that strong mortar in between and the strong foundation on the bottom, one hard push and it's going to fall over. The reason that when we build buildings we interlink the bricks is because that's what gives us the strength. So when we're thinking about now our workplace mental health culture, we can liken our people and our employees, including our leaders, to the bricks. If we interlink and have those support structures where we rely and have peer support within that structure, that's what's going to give us the strength. So how do we achieve this? This is where you can start to build in support networks, drawing on that plan and that research we did in the beginning. We can look at using networks within the organization, such as mental health first aid. We can look at Living Works, Safe Talk, and assist training, particularly around mental health and suicide prevention. We can build a network within the business now where we have strength, where we have support within the business, just like the bricks interlinked, giving us that strength between our employees, our leaders, and the entire organization. This also gives us the opportunity to look out for those indications, those warning signs, for that early intervention. How do we actually get to the point where we can pick up when we look earlier, when people are saying, hey, I'm in the yellow today? Well, what does that actually mean? We've got some information now, some education behind us to know. I've noticed some of those changes. I've seen some of those differences within that person. And I've actually got some skills to assist that person. And they've actually got the avenues to get that support within the organization at wherever they feel most comfortable. We can look at creating forums and groups, consultative committees, where we get people with lived experience to come in, because they're the ones who provide us with the greatest insight. The people who understand what those challenges are, who have been through adversity, whether it be within the workplace or externally. And they can share those learnings with us in a safe environment so we can actually implement some things to not only assist them, but to assist people in the future as we move through. Some good examples that we've used in our organization is a mates network. We've worked together with an organization called Mates in Construction. And we've got in our business now a very, very strong support structure of people who have been trained in suicide prevention and how to identify when someone's struggling. Having that across the state has been really, really valuable to our organization. Using modern technology, such as online groups, we can actually communicate some information. We can use those groups to inform each other about learnings and key things that we've come across. We've also got Lived Experience Group, which we've partnered up with an organization called Roses in the Ocean, who are a suicide prevention organization. These people have been through challenges, suicide related, and they've got the ability and the training now to actually talk about that in the workplace, and they're a safe place to go. If you just want somebody to talk to, confidentially, they're there for us. We've got a mental health consultative forum, which is made up of champions from each division. People who have a real keen passion, who can actually talk with their peers, understand the challenges, and bring them together in a forum where we can actually influence change. We've got myself and my colleague as mental health advocates. We can actually get out there. We spend a lot of time throughout the business in each division and each department, talking to people, supporting people, understanding those challenges. Because using that lived experience, as I've said, is the most valuable tool we've got. Simply picking whatever we saw on the shelf that was really shiny that I said at the start is not going to give us what we need. Talking to people, having that insight is far more valuable, and it will lead us to getting the right outcomes that we were looking for. We've got resources inside the workplace, but it's also important to look at what resources are outside the workplace. How do we educate people on what help is out there, out beyond the workplace? Because they may feel more comfortable or safe having those conversations away from work. So providing education and support within that framework of how to identify within ourselves what a challenge looks like and when to reach out for help. We often hear, if you're struggling, reach out for help and call these helplines, or we can go to GPs and things, but actually telling people, what does that look like? What is that point when we are struggling? Helping people to understand that, because as I say at the start, without having those foundations of having those conversations, anything we do at this point now is really not going to last, or it's going to be any value to anybody. Ongoing maintenance is really, really important, just like it is within a physical structure. We need to look at how we address things that may compromise the structure and those within it. And workplace mental health is no different. It's not a simple set and forget, and now we've dealt with that, we've ticked that box and we can move on. Because this isn't a simple box ticking exercise. We need to actually demonstrate that we care, and by doing that, regular maintenance is going to do that. Just think about the past 18 months we've had within the wider world with the pandemic. If we just relied on what we had in place before that and didn't check back in, we could potentially have been harming people or exposing them to threats and harm that we didn't even foresee. So what does that mean? Checking in regularly and involving people within that early problem recognition is the solution. And these are the key ingredients. Tapping into that lived experience in the right way. Think back to our building. You know, if the power went off and we didn't do anything about it, or we just said, hey, you know what, I've just rang the painter to come and have a look at that. We're looking in the wrong place for the answers. We actually need to look in the right place, and that's why lived experience and tapping into the employees who are living within that structure and working within that structure every day are where we're going to get the best solutions from, and how to identify these challenges. How do we achieve this? Well, we can use surveys and questionnaires, of course, and they're a really quick and easy way to actually identify some challenges that are happening, and they give us some raw data. We need to take into consideration what's actually happening currently within that part of the business or within the wider world, and take that into consideration when we look at the results, but we can certainly get some good insights and start the ball rolling. Having those direct conversations within the business at all levels are really important. Being able to respond in a timely way is how we're going to reduce that exposure to harm. Just again, like our building, if there was a crack in the roof that was appearing and we didn't see it, we could have potential harm to anybody in that structure if it failed. This is no different. If we don't see the cracks as they're starting to form, we could potentially expose people to harm, and that's not where we want to be. So use those peer networks. Be transparent with your information from all levels. Often how the human brain works is when there's uncertainty and we don't know, we haven't got the answers, the brain goes into solution focus, but it often looks at it from a skewed negative angle. So when we aren't transparent within the business or within what we know, even if we don't know anything, but just getting together and having that conversation, say, look, I don't know what's happening, but potentially this could be an outcome, this is what we've got in place, is going to reduce some of that stress and anxiety. Simply leaving people to their own devices or leaving people in the dark, we're probably going to expose them to going down a negative path and exposing people to harm. In summary, to create a strong workplace mental health structure, we can liken it to building a physical structure. Key steps need to be followed and in the right order. So we start with planning. We need to understand what we want to achieve. We need to understand the challenges, the potential threats. Are we focusing in the right area? We need to start in the right place first, but we need to do that by careful planning and understanding. Then we need to lay those foundations, and the foundations are laid on the ability to start opening these conversations so we can start talking about mental health and mental ill health within the workplace. Without the ability to talk about the subject or the topic, anything we do in the future will be short-lived or may not even get off the ground. We need to look at building that consistent support, just like the mortar between our bricks. It needs to be consistent at all levels, from the very top of the building or our workplace, right the way down to the bottom. That needs to be consistent in the messaging. And that's delivered by actions, meeting the words. Employees can see through tokenistic, or what they may call box-ticking exercises. That's not genuine. People can see that. We're dealing with human beings here and they know that. We need to lead and set that example at all levels of leadership. But we need to ensure before we do that, we've got support in place for leaders. Then we look at the structure itself, the bricks. We lay them interlinked for strength. This is just like the employees. We need to build that strength within the workplace and that environment by having things such as networks. We provide that education to people so they can understand, they know who they can lean on, they know how to identify things within themselves or their colleagues. And we've got avenues of where we can go to get help, assistance and support, whether that be within the workplace or outside the workplace. And then we need to not just neglect the maintenance. We need to check back in regularly with the groups that we've formed, the lived experience people who have experienced things within the workplace, so that we can identify things or challenges as they come along, just like in our building. We can look at the cracks that may be forming and get the right people in to assist us with that. This is just like in the workplace. Any challenges, threats, or potential hazards that are coming up from a psychological perspective is best informed by the people who are actually living that. So we tap into that for regular maintenance. We look at what's available outside, on the shelves. Yeah, that's great. And that may fit our needs now because we've got a plan, we've got a structure, and we've got regular maintenance. Now we might be able to use those things that look good on the shelf because we recognize that fits right here and right now. And that's what we can achieve by the regular maintenance. Hopefully this has given you some insights into how to create a strong mental health culture in your workplace, with some practical steps you can follow. Thank you for your time and good luck.
Okay, that concludes today's event and presentation. Thank you very much, James, for sharing all of that information with us, and I hope that you have all found that very useful. As mentioned at the start, any questions, put them into the chat box right now and we will get back to you after today's events. And I'll actually put up on the screen next a few contact email addresses, so if you would like to reach out to us, you can. Now, I would also like to take a moment to thank our co-hosts, the Australian and New Zealand Mental Health Association, for helping to bring this to life. We hope that you have all found this very helpful, and hopefully there's some information you can take back to your own workplace or organisation to promote that positive mental health culture. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you next time.